It started with a mistake, hers, not mine. Wednesday afternoon, middle of the workday, I get a notification on my phone. Not an unusual thing, I get alerts for every purchase over $50. Helps keep an eye on spending, especially since she's been a little reckless lately. New makeup hauls, wellness retreats, weird online shopping binges at 2 a.m. that I catch when checking statements. But this one was different. It wasn't reckless. It was personal. I was halfway through signing off on a vendor invoice when I saw it, $212.90 at Marlowe and Finch, a place I know she always called a waste of money every time I suggested going there for dinner. It's the kind of place with low lighting, oysters on crushed ice, menus without prices, and waiters who act like you should be grateful for their time. And the timestamp? Tuesday night, 8:47 p.m. Now here's where things stop making sense. Tuesday night, she was home. We were on the couch. She was wearing that massive hoodie, the one that swallows her whole, and pretending to fall asleep watching some true crime doc. She didn't have wine. She didn't have makeup on. She didn't even shower. That's what I thought. But now this receipt. From a restaurant that's a 40-minute drive from our house. And $200? For what, a ghost meal? My first instinct wasn't rage. It was calculation. Quiet, sharp-edged calculation. I didn't tell her I saw it. I didn't text. Didn't even breathe differently. I saved the notification. Sat back in my chair and let the timeline fracture in my head. If she wasn't there with me, where the hell was she? That evening I got home like normal. Walked in, kissed her cheek, told her she smelled nice. She didn't, not really, just a clean scent like fresh laundry, but I needed to test something. She smiled. That sweet, smug smile. Not nervous. Not weird. Just normal. And then I saw it, her nails. Yesterday they were chipped to hell. She was picking at them all weekend, talking about how she needed to make an appointment. But now they were perfectly done. Pale pink. Shiny. Neat. You don't fall asleep on the couch with new nails. I said nothing. Instead, I waited. 2 nights later, she left her phone face down while she went to take a shower. Nothing unusual. Except it vibrated. Once. Then again. Then again. I don't snoop. I don't believe in that kind of thing. But something about the way my hands moved before I even made the decision to look told me my body didn't care about my principles. The screen lit up. Oliver, last night was worth the risk. I opened it. Yes, I did. The thread was short, but brutal. Her, I'm thinking about you more than I should. Him, you taste better when you're lying. Her, stop. You're bad. Him, you like that. There were no pictures. No long professions of love. Just poison wrapped in whispers. And I sat there, holding the phone, listening to the shower run upstairs, thinking about the Tuesday night she fell asleep on the couch next to me. When she came out of the bathroom, towel around her head, humming like nothing in the world was broken, I handed her the phone and said, "You forgot to respond." She paused, blinked, tilted her head like I was speaking another language. Then her face changed. Like watching paint crack on a wall. Slow, inevitable. Not fear, irritation. "You went through my phone," she said. Not denial. Not confusion. Not even fake sadness. Just that. I didn't respond. I just stared at her, watching her build the lie in real time. She tucked the towel tighter, crossed her arms like she was cold, and narrowed her eyes like I was the one out of line. Then she did the worst thing imaginable. She smiled. "You've been bored lately, haven't you?" That's when something shifted in me. Not snapped. Snapping is clean, quick. This was slower. Like the ground softening under your feet before it swallows you. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed her purse, dumped it on the bed. She screamed at me, not words, just noise. Like a protest that didn't have a real target. I pulled out the receipt. From Marlowe and Finch. Right there, with a lipstick kiss on the corner like it was a love letter. "I paid for your date," I said. She didn't flinch. Just shrugged. "And?" That's what she said. "And?" Like she'd forgotten the part where I was her husband. That was the moment. Right there. The emotional lights in my chest went black. No panic. No sadness. Just ice where warmth used to be. I opened the banking app, froze the card she used. Watched her eyes shift when the alert came in on her phone. She looked at me like I just spit on her shoes. "You're being dramatic," she said. I walked out of the room. She followed. Kept asking questions like she was in control. Like this was some negotiation between roommates, not a betrayal so ugly it made the walls feel fake. "I didn't do anything worse than you have," she shouted after me. That line. That one line. I never cheated. Never even thought about it. But that's how liars work. They smear mud on you before you get the chance to wipe the blood off them. I didn't speak to her the rest of the night. I went to sleep in the guest room. Door locked. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I planned. And if you're wondering whether that plan includes her, trust me, it doesn't. I didn't leave the house the next day. Told work I had a stomach bug. It wasn't a lie, not exactly. Something inside me was sick, but not in any way that could be solved with medicine. She tiptoed around the kitchen that morning like I was some fragile antique, pausing near the guest room like she wanted to say something. But she didn't. She made coffee. The wrong kind. Like she suddenly forgot how I take it, left it on the counter and disappeared upstairs. That's when I noticed her car keys were still on the hook. No sudden errands. No yoga class she forgot to mention. She wasn't trying to hide today. She was stalling. At noon, I pulled out my laptop. And I started digging. Phone records. Card history. Calendar. iCloud. There's something about betrayal that turns you into a forensic expert. You start remembering odd details like that one night 2 weeks ago when she claimed she was out with Megan for dinner and came back flushed, laughing at something she wouldn't explain. Or that weekend solo hike she did where she said the signal was bad so she couldn't answer texts. How she started using cash more often. How her perfume would be fresh at 9 p.m. after a nap. How she suddenly started locking her phone when she went to the bathroom. It was all there. The pattern. A trail of mismatched timestamps and stories that didn't hold up under pressure. She was careful, yes, but not careful enough. By 2 p.m. I had what I needed. I knew his name, Oliver, the one from the text. But now I had his last name, his LinkedIn, his gym location, and the name of his dog. I didn't care about confronting him. That would be too easy, too small. My war wasn't with him. It was with her performance. So I waited again. She came downstairs around 5. Full makeup. Hair done. Wearing those jeans she only wears when she wants attention. Holding her phone like it was some fragile crystal egg. I'm going to Megan's, she said, not looking at me. That was her mistake. Saying the name again. Committing to the lie knowing it had already collapsed. I looked up from my laptop. Tell her I said hi. She paused. Just for a split second. That half-breath of hesitation when a liar realizes they're walking into a trap but can't change direction in time. Then she left. I didn't follow. Instead, I called Megan. We weren't close, but close enough. We'd done game nights. Shared birthday dinners. She always struck me as someone with too much honesty in her eyes. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, it's me, I said. Quick question, is she on her way? Silence. Then carefully, to what? And just like that, the last bit of doubt inside me shattered. I hung up. And I knew exactly where she was headed. Not because she told me, but because she didn't. Because when someone lies too often, they get lazy. Predictable. Arrogant. She was with him again. The same man I now knew had a record for petty theft in 2018 and who left his last girlfriend after draining her savings. A man who thought expensive dinners on someone else's dime made him a genius. Who had no idea the husband of the woman he was seeing had just canceled her card again. This time while she was mid-dinner. An hour later, I got the alert. Transaction declined, $189.74, The Grove. Another overpriced hotspot. Another fake romantic evening she wasn't supposed to pay for. I sat there, imagining the look on her face when the waiter came back and quietly whispered that the card was declined. Imagined her laughing awkwardly, saying there must be a mistake, fumbling for another card, checking her phone for notifications that wouldn't come because I blocked them. Imagined Oliver watching her, confused, annoyed, suddenly realizing she wasn't quite the woman she pretended to be. And in that moment I felt something that surprised me. Joy. Not the kind of joy you share. Not the bright, celebratory kind. But the cold, delicious kind that simmers when you know a liar just got caught in front of the person they were trying to impress. That slow, creeping satisfaction of balance. At 10:43 p.m. she came home. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say a word. Walked into the kitchen like a ghost in designer jeans. I was sitting at the dining table. Laptop open. Credit card app on the screen. She dropped her purse on the floor like it had betrayed her. Then she turned to me and said, "Are you serious?" Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "Let me explain." Just that. I stood up. Calmly. Walked toward her. Not close. Just close enough for her to feel the shift in gravity. "You said we were healing," I said. Then I saw the bank alert. "You paid for dinner with him." My chest sank. She rolled her eyes. Rolled her eyes. That's when I realized she wasn't sorry. Not even a little. She wasn't guilty. She was just mad that I caught her. Furious that her safety net had teeth. Her voice was low, sharp. "You're being childish." I smiled. Just slightly. "You called it healing. I call it surveillance. You lied to my face with a smile and thought I'd never catch up. That's not healing. That's demolition. And now? I'm rebuilding without you." She tried to argue, but her voice cracked halfway through. She called me paranoid. Accused me of having control issues. Tried to twist it, flip the narrative like I was the villain. But she didn't realize she was already irrelevant to the ending. This wasn't heartbreak. This was the beginning of a strategy. She didn't sleep in the bedroom that night. She didn't ask to. She stayed downstairs, probably thinking she was taking some kind of moral high ground. I heard her pacing. Then silence. Then the fridge door. Then silence again. That was her rhythm, noise, withdrawal, noise, withdrawal. A storm in a teacup. Loud but harmless. I didn't come down. I didn't want another conversation full of twisted words and emotional sleight of hand. I wanted her to wonder what I was doing. I wanted her to imagine what I had planned. Because in the silence of a betrayed man, there's more power than in 1,000 shouted fights. The next morning, she was gone before sunrise. No note. No text. But she left something better, her laptop. I don't know if she did it by mistake or arrogance. Either way, it felt like a confession. She always kept it chained to her like a third arm. Now it was sitting there, half open, like she didn't even care anymore. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't look. But I did. And what I found changed everything. It wasn't the messages that broke me, though there were more. A full folder of screenshots from their chats, oddly labeled Monday Morning Smile. It wasn't even the 2 canceled Airbnb bookings in cities she told me she hated. No, it was the spreadsheet. A real, actual spreadsheet. Titled Plan B. I opened it thinking it was work. She freelanced for some marketing firm always full of jargon and strategy decks. But this was personal. And clinical. Each row was a date. Each column had categories. What I said. What he doesn't know. What I need to do next. What he'll believe. I read line after line like I was studying the autopsy report of our marriage. Under March 4th. Told him I was going to Megan's. Oliver says I should make the move soon. Need to start separating finances. He'll never guess. He still trusts me. My vision tunneled. The room shrank. My heart didn't race, it slowed, like it was bracing for an impact it had seen coming from miles away but hadn't had the guts to move from. I kept reading. April 10th. Said we should try couples therapy to keep appearances. He's getting suspicious but not enough. Start making him feel guilty. If I cry, he listens. It was all there. The plan. Not to fix us. Not to leave with dignity. But to bleed me dry on the way out. To extract everything she could before finally discarding the man who built her entire world. Her fallback. Her idiot. Her bank account with a heartbeat. She wasn't just cheating. She was strategizing. And the worst part? I couldn't even recognize her anymore. Not the girl I met. Not the woman I married. Not even the cold stranger from last night. This was someone else entirely. A tactician wearing my wife's skin. I closed the laptop. I didn't scream. Didn't smash anything. What would that solve? She expected a meltdown. She probably needed it to justify whatever narrative she was crafting in her head. He was unstable. He scared me. He was always controlling. No, she wasn't getting that. What she'd get was control. Mine. So I sat down, opened my own laptop, and began writing an email. Not to her. To her boss, the one who didn't know she'd used company time and a company laptop for her side adventures. Then to our accountant. To separate our finances. I started closing joint accounts, disabling automatic payments, locking down everything she took for granted. I called my lawyer. And then I did something she'd never see coming. I invited her mother over. She hated her mother. Called her overbearing. Controlling. But her mother loved me. Always said I brought out the best in her daughter. And I wanted her to see what that best had turned into. She arrived an hour later, confused but curious. I showed her everything. The messages. The spreadsheet. The receipts. At first, she tried to defend her daughter, some reflexive maternal instinct. But 5 minutes in, even she stopped. This isn't the girl I raised, she said. No, I said. It's the woman I married. She left without saying goodbye. That night, my wife came home to an empty closet. Not hers, mine. My side was cleared out. My books. My cologne. My drawer of old baseball jerseys. Gone. I was sitting in the living room. She walked in, saw the suitcase by the door, and froze. What are you doing? I didn't answer right away. I stood up, walked to the dining table, picked up the printout of her Plan B spreadsheet, and handed it to her. She didn't even look at it. She tore it in half like that would erase the damage. I leaned in close, not touching her, just close enough for her to hear me say, calmly. Plan C just started. Then I walked out. I moved into a short-term rental that night, a soulless little one-bedroom near the river, the kind of place you choose when you need silence more than comfort. It had ugly beige walls, cheap blinds that clacked in the wind, and a bed that smelled like detergent and disappointment. But it was mine. Every inch of it. No perfume in the air. No lies soaking into the furniture. Just oxygen and space and time. I didn't tell her where I was going. I wanted her to sit in that house surrounded by her own echoes, try to figure out which part of her story collapsed first. I wanted her to wonder who knew. Who I told. How deep the cut went. Because now? It was surgical. The next week was a slow unraveling. I played it smart, no public accusations, no emotional outbursts, no social media drama. Just action. Targeted, clean, deliberate. I met with the lawyer again, made it clear I wanted the separation filed immediately. No fault? No chance. There was enough proof of financial and emotional betrayal to justify everything. She wouldn't be touching my savings. Not after that spreadsheet. And the real kicker? The car she drove was under my name. Registered. Insured. Paid off by me last December. She called me that Tuesday afternoon, didn't even bother with pleasantries. Did you report the car stolen? No, I said, sipping my coffee. I reclaimed it. You can't do that. I need it. I paused, let the silence grow uncomfortable. You need a lot of things, I said. Loyalty. Integrity. Apparently transportation. Only one of those is my problem. She called me something under her breath and hung up. I didn't call back. Wednesday, I received a message from Megan. Just a single sentence. You were right. That was all. No explanations. No sympathy. Just the quiet weight of someone realizing they'd been used too. I knew what had happened. My wife must have tried to drag her into it, maybe convince her to lie again, maybe beg her to be a character witness for some twisted version of the story. But Megan wasn't having it. Maybe she remembered all those dinners where I cooked while they talked on the patio. Maybe she remembered the way I looked at her friend like she was something rare, not disposable. Maybe she was just tired of being a pawn. Either way, the truth was out now. And my wife? She was starting to lose control. The following Friday, she showed up at the rental. I don't know how she found the address. Maybe the lawyer accidentally gave it up. Maybe she followed me. I opened the door expecting food delivery, and there she was, standing in a black coat, no makeup, hair pulled back like she was trying to look smaller than she was. She didn't speak right away. Just looked at me, then at the apartment behind me like she expected to find someone else in there. She didn't. Can I come in? She asked. No. Please. Still no. So she stood in the hallway like a child waiting for punishment and finally said, I think we should talk. I crossed my arms. About which version of the story? She flinched. I messed up, she said. I raised an eyebrow. That's what you call it? She sighed like she was the victim of some unfortunate misunderstanding. It wasn't supposed to get this far. Oh, I read your spreadsheet. It was very detailed. You had at least 3 phases mapped out. That's not a mess up. That's a blueprint. She shifted her weight, suddenly defensive. You don't understand what it's like being with someone who never sees you. I laughed low and sharp. No. I don't understand what it's like being with someone who sees you and still decides to lie. Who plans to lie? Who kisses you goodnight while writing an exit strategy on Excel? She looked like she wanted to cry. But nothing came. And that's when it hit me, she was empty. Not broken. Not remorseful. Just empty. All her apologies were performances. All her regret was theater. She didn't come to make things right. She came because she was losing the script. And I wasn't her audience anymore. I stepped forward, leaned against the door frame. You don't miss me, I said. You miss control. You miss the safety net. You miss the man who let you lie without consequences. She didn't respond. Just stared at the ground like it might swallow her up. I handed her an envelope. Inside, a photocopy of the court notice. Separation initiated. Financial division proposal included. This is your new blueprint, I said. No phases. Just facts. She took it with shaking hands. You'll regret this, she whispered. I nodded. You already do. And I closed the door. The morning after I closed that door on her, I expected silence. What I got was noise, the messy, flailing kind. 3 missed calls from her. 2 voicemails, one sounding sad, the other angry. 1 text from a number I didn't recognize. You don't know what really happened. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I looked it up. Oliver's burner, probably. The one she gave him when they thought they were clever. What struck me wasn't the audacity, it was the desperation behind it. They were spiraling fast. The performance had cracked wide open and they were still out there trying to stitch it back together with threats and half-truths. It would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the text to my lawyer and added a short note, add this to the harassment log. That same afternoon, I received an email from the firm handling our joint investment property, the beach condo we bought 2 years ago with plans to retire early. It had been rented out for months. Passive income. Clean and quiet. Except now, someone had used my login to cancel the upcoming listing and block the calendar for the next 3 weeks. The system had flagged it as unusual activity since it came from a new device. I didn't even have to ask. It was her. She wanted to get there first. Make it hers. Probably to run away with him for a bit, escape the fallout like some tragic heroine in a bad romance novel. But it wasn't just an escape. It was another tactic. Claim the asset, make it hers, dig her claws in deeper. Too late. I called the management office directly, told them to lock the account, flagged it for fraud, and added a note, do not grant access to anyone but myself or legal representative. Then I made a call to someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 4 years, my cousin Ryan. He's a contractor, used to be a bit of a wreck, but cleaned up, got smart, started flipping properties. I gave him the address of the beach condo and said, I want it emptied. I want it listed for sale. And I want it done by the end of the week. He didn't ask questions. Just said, say no more. I sat back, phone in hand, thinking how strange it was that the places we once called dreams could so easily turn into weapons. The condo. The car. The accounts. Every shared thing had become a battlefield. But this wasn't about stuff anymore. It was about her losing her grip. Later that night, around midnight, I received an email from her, subject line blank, body just a PDF. It was a letter. Typed. Cold. She was accusing me of emotional neglect. Not abuse, she wasn't that stupid. But a carefully worded, calculated accusation of dismissiveness, passive-aggressive behavior, and financial control. It read like it was written by someone who'd Googled how to paint yourself as a victim during divorce proceedings. I read it once. Then twice. Then I turned off the screen and just sat there. Silent. Unmoving. Not because I was shocked, but because I could finally see the whole chessboard. She was burning everything now. Turning the earth under our marriage to ash just to feel like she was still winning. She wasn't trying to make me come back. She was trying to make me pay. But she had already lost. Because when someone reveals they're capable of this kind of betrayal, this level of manipulation, what else is left to destroy? Love? Gone. Trust? Vapor. The version of her I used to hold onto? Dead and buried. I pulled out a notebook. Wrote one line across the top of the page. Document every attempt to rewrite history. And underneath it I started a list. Every fake claim. Every block transaction. Every time she contacted friends behind my back, tried to smear me sideways with passive little comments like, he's just so different lately, you know? I wasn't documenting for revenge. I was documenting for freedom. For the inevitable moment in court when she'd cry in front of a judge, trying to paint herself as the woman who just didn't feel seen anymore, and I'd calmly hand over a timeline, a spreadsheet, and 27 screenshots showing the exact opposite. Truth over theater. Proof over pity. Control over chaos. She underestimated how dangerous a quiet man becomes when he stops trying to protect what he loves and starts preparing to bury it properly. 1 week passed. She didn't stop. The calls slowed down, but the tactics shifted. She started leaking pieces of our story to mutual friends, her version. Carefully chosen, sanitized, bent just enough to make her sound complex rather than cruel. A woman who was emotionally starving. A woman whose husband shut down a long time ago. A woman who wasn't perfect, but who tried. It worked on some of them. But not on James. He was my oldest friend. Knew her from the beginning. Knew the cracks were new, not old. He called me on a Thursday, voice heavy like he'd been carrying the weight for days. She told Natalie you were controlling, he said. That you made her feel like a prisoner. I waited. Let the silence speak. He continued, she also said Oliver was just someone she confided in. That it was never physical. That you're overreacting. I almost laughed. She confided in him at the Grove, I said. And Marlowe and Finch. And that Airbnb in Asheville. Thought so, James muttered. Natalie didn't buy it either. So now she was playing martyr. Not just cheating, not just lying, but crafting an entire mythology where she was the misunderstood, repressed wife who made one tiny mistake with a kind stranger and got punished for it by her cold, unfeeling husband. And the worst part? She believed it. Because the thing about people like her, they don't lie to hurt you. They lie to protect themselves from who they are. And when you remove the mirror, they panic. They invent new reflections. But I had a plan. That Sunday I asked James to host a dinner. Just a casual get-together, nothing serious, him, Natalie, 2 other mutuals, and me. He agreed. She wasn't invited. That was important. Because when you cut the puppeteer's strings, you don't let her back on the stage. The dinner wasn't about socializing. It was a message. I showed up calm, present, collected, laughed at jokes, poured drinks, asked about everyone's work. And at some point, I casually brought up a story from last fall, the one where I surprised her with a trip to Chicago because she said she needed air. She cried on the rooftop bar overlooking the city, told me I made her feel safe. She said she felt more loved that night than she had in years, I told them. Natalie blinked. That's not the story I heard. James shot her a glance. I smiled. I imagine she's telling a lot of stories lately. I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. I wanted to remind them of something simple, I was always there. She wasn't. The following day, I received another message, this time from her sister. We hadn't spoken in months. She'd always kept her distance from our marriage, but the message was brief and brutal. I don't know what she's doing anymore. I just want you to know I believe you. That was enough. That was the beginning of the tide turning. But tides don't turn cleanly, they drag debris first. Pull everything loose before shifting direction. So it wasn't surprising when, a few days later, she made one last move. She showed up at my workplace. Unannounced. Wearing the coat I bought her for Christmas, a calculated visual, I'm sure. Something to trigger emotion, memory. I saw her through the glass door of the lobby before she stepped in. Hair curled. Eyes wide. An expression somewhere between apology and performance. I met her in the hallway before security could intervene. What are you doing? I asked flatly. I need to talk, she said. Just 5 minutes. No. Please. Not here. I guided her outside. Cold wind. Empty street. She looked at me, lips trembling slightly, and for a second, a very brief, surgical second, I thought she was going to try honesty. But no. I know I messed up, she began. But I've been going to therapy. I'm trying to fix things. I thought maybe if we could just talk. You're not trying to fix things, I cut in. You're trying to manage the damage. She blinked. That's not fair. Neither was Oliver. Or the lies. Or the spreadsheet. Her mouth twitched. Like she wanted to yell. But there were people passing by. And for once, she couldn't perform without an audience. You still love me, she said, suddenly softer. I know you do. And there it was. The final card. Not anger. Not guilt. Just memory. Nostalgia. A flicker of the old version of her she kept in a jar and dusted off when she needed to manipulate. I leaned in, close enough for her to smell the truth. I used to, I said. But that version of you died the day you priced out your exit plan. She looked like she might cry. But the tears never came. And neither did I. I turned. Walked back inside. Left her standing there with the wind in her hair and nothing left to leverage. She wasn't a villain. She was something worse. A coward who dressed up her choices as survival. The next morning felt lighter. Not like healing, more like clearing. Like I'd gutted a rotten structure and the air could finally move through it. I wasn't smiling, but I wasn't heavy anymore either. And that absence of weight? It was addictive. She didn't show up again. But her silence was noisy. The kind that makes people nervous. Like she was building something behind a curtain, waiting for a final scene where she could emerge as the misunderstood phoenix, rising from the ashes of her own mess with freshly painted wings. And sure enough, 2 days later, she pulled the trigger. I got served. Not a response to my separation filing, a countersuit. She was accusing me of emotional abandonment, financial aggression, and public defamation. She claimed I humiliated her in our shared social circle, weaponized finances to control her independence, and get this, created an emotionally volatile environment where she feared for her safety. There it was. The safety card. Always the last trick up the sleeve when nothing else sticks. She even included testimonies, quotes from friends I hadn't spoken to in months, vague half-truths ripped out of context. One of them apparently said I'd changed and seemed unreachable in recent months. That was probably from a dinner party where I sat through 2 hours of her pretending we were still happy while she played footsie with her phone under the table. I read through it once, then twice. My hands didn't shake. I sent it straight to my lawyer with a short message. We're not playing defense anymore. He called me 30 minutes later. We can destroy this, he said calmly. But you need to be ready. She's pushing for court now. I said one word, good. Because here's the thing, when you're betrayed, people expect rage. They expect pain. They don't expect precision. And she had no idea I'd been collecting every detail, every message, every lie she planted like a seed in the garden of her downfall. The next week was methodical. My lawyer compiled our case into 3 chapters. The infidelity trail, receipts, locations, text logs, the spreadsheet. A narrative so airtight even her therapist would wince. The financial manipulation, proof she used my accounts for personal indulgences while planning her exit, including 2 failed attempts to access locked investment funds. The social campaign, screenshots, voice messages, even a clipped audio recording from a mutual friend where she admitted she was shaping the story to make people see her side. I didn't have to embellish. All I had to do was show up with the truth. And then, just before things went to court, another twist. Her job dropped her. A quiet removal. HR told her they were restructuring, but everyone knew. Someone leaked the file? Not from me. I didn't need to. Someone in the office must have seen enough, heard enough, smelled enough of the rot to start pulling away. She called me. I didn't answer. She emailed me. 3 sentences. I lost everything. Is this what you wanted? No. It was never about revenge. It was about equilibrium. About restoring the math. 1 betrayal, 1 consequence. 1 lie, 1 exposure. You don't bring fire to someone's life and expect them to warm their hands with it. I didn't respond. I was done being her confessional. That weekend I went to the beach condo one last time, the same one she tried to hijack. Ryan had finished clearing it out. It was bare now. Clean. The sound of the ocean felt honest. I walked through each room slowly. Touched nothing. Just stood there, letting the space breathe. I used to dream here. With her. Yeah? I was wide awake. And I didn't miss her. She didn't take the silence well. When the legal path started cracking under the weight of her lies, she pivoted again, straight into martyrdom. Public posts, subtle but strategic. No names, of course, but anyone who'd been within 2 blocks of our relationship knew who she meant. Things like, sometimes the person you'd take a bullet for is the one holding the gun. I stayed too long. I forgot who I was. Healing isn't linear, especially after emotional warfare. And the comments? All the usual sympathy from the gullible. You're so strong. He doesn't deserve you. Sending light and love. It would have been laughable if it weren't so calculated. She was laundering her guilt in public empathy. Weaponizing vagueness. Drowning truth in poetic self-pity. It wasn't enough that she betrayed me privately, now she wanted applause for surviving the consequences of her own choices. I watched from a distance. Didn't comment. Didn't react. But others started to. Natalie, the one she tried to manipulate, left a simple comment on one post. That's not what happened. But okay. No argument. Just a pin to pop the balloon. 3 hours later, the post vanished. That was the beginning of her losing control over the narrative. People were quieter around her now. Not cold. Just hesitant. Like they could smell the residue of something sour beneath the sweetness. Then came the big hit. The court date was set. She tried to delay, claimed illness, claimed unavailability, even tried to switch lawyers last minute. But the judge didn't buy it. The case was moving forward. And with it, so was I. Not just legally. Personally. See, while she was busy rehearsing lines for her next pity post, I was rebuilding the structure of my life. Quietly. Intentionally. I reconnected with my brother. We'd been distant for years. I started running again, not for fitness, but for rhythm. I even signed up for a woodworking class. Something slow. Something real. Something that didn't lie to me. And one day, while walking through the downtown market, I ran into Megan. She saw me before I saw her. Hesitated. Then waved. She looked lighter too. We talked, not about her, not right away. We talked about how tired we both were of pretending things made sense when they didn't. And then, unprompted, Megan said, "She told me you were controlling. That you tracked her phone. That you made her feel small." I said nothing. Just waited. She was lying. I know that now. I nodded. Took me longer than it should have to know it too. Megan looked at me carefully. Then said something that stuck. "She never hated you. She hated your clarity. You made her feel seen, and that's the one thing she couldn't control." That night, I lay in bed in my apartment, the rental I now treated like a sanctuary, and stared at the ceiling thinking about that word. Clarity. That's what she ran from. Not boredom. Not neglect. Not even guilt. She ran from being understood. Because once I understood her, really understood her, the tactics, the detachment, the performance, she had nothing left to hide behind. And now neither did I. No more wishing she'd change. No more wondering what I could have done differently. I had done everything right. I just chose the wrong person to do it for. The court day came. Gray sky. Cold air. Fitting. I didn't dress for war, no expensive suit, no theatrical presence. Just a dark blazer, clean shirt, and a calm expression. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to finish. She arrived 20 minutes late, of course. Flanked by her lawyer, face composed, but too composed. The kind of stillness that comes from rehearsed restraint, not peace. She didn't look at me at first. But when she finally did, I caught something new in her eyes, not hate, not regret. Just vacancy. The performance had burned through all its fuel. Inside the courtroom, it all came out. My lawyer laid out the case like clockwork. Not dramatic. Just undeniable. Emails, receipts, messages, financial anomalies. The spreadsheet was entered into evidence like it was a page from a tactical manual. Her lawyer squirmed, tried to soften the impact with phrases like emotional context and unintended consequences, but the judge didn't bite. Then came her turn to speak. She tried to cry, forced a tremble into her voice. Talked about feeling isolated. About years of emotional suffocation. About finding comfort in an unlikely place. The judge asked her to explain what comfort meant. She hesitated. Said support. My lawyer said one word, define. And just like that, her whole narrative collapsed. She couldn't explain away the dinners. The stays. The transactions in hotels listed under both their names. She said they didn't cross a line, but even she looked bored of her own defense by then. And then came the final blow. My lawyer submitted a signed statement from Oliver's ex-girlfriend. We'd found her. Quiet, reserved, reluctant at first. But when she saw what was happening, she agreed to speak. She described the same patterns. The same strategies. The same comfort that turned out to be scripted manipulation. And in that moment, the courtroom went still. Even her lawyer looked away. It didn't take long. The judge ruled in my favor on every major point. Financial protection granted. Assets split in my favor. Her claims dismissed with prejudice. And just like that, it was over. I walked out of the building not as a man vindicated, but a man freed. She didn't follow me out. She stayed behind in the hallway talking to her lawyer, arms folded, lips pressed tight like a child who finally got told no for the first time in her life. I didn't look back. That night, I drove back to the city with the windows cracked, the cold air pouring in like water after a fire. The skyline didn't look the same, not smaller, not bigger. Just real. Solid. Unmoving. I stopped by a small bar I used to go to in my 20s. Ordered one drink. Sat at the corner table. Thought about the man I'd been when I first met her. Thought about the version of me she tried to unmake. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel anything jagged in my chest. No rage. No grief. Just peace. That rare, golden quiet that only comes after a storm when everything is finally true. It's strange how silence becomes a language. A few weeks after the court ruling, the noise stopped completely. No more texts. No more cryptic posts. No secondhand gossip filtered through mutual friends. Just nothing. Like she'd dissolved into the quiet, slipped beneath the waves of her own wreckage, hoping that if she held still long enough, the world would forget what she did. But I didn't forget. I remembered everything, not because I wanted to hold on to the pain, but because it had become part of my architecture. It wasn't baggage anymore. It was blueprint. And I was building something new. Freedom isn't loud. It's not explosive. It doesn't come with applause. It's the slow realization that no one is taking from you anymore. No one is reshaping your reality in small, selfish increments. No one is standing in your kitchen with a smile and a dagger behind their back. No one is rewriting your history while you sleep next to them. She used to do this thing, and I didn't realize how much it defined her until later, where she changed the ending of every story she told. She'd leave out just enough. A just tone. Shift a detail here, a motive there. Not lies, not exactly, more like curated distortions. And I let her. Because love, when it's blind, will hand over truth piece by piece if it thinks it'll keep the peace. But love with eyes wide open? That love leaves. That love rebuilds. I moved out of the rental a month later. Got a place on the edge of the city. Big windows. Brick walls. No ghosts in the corners. I filled it with wood and stone and plants that don't need too much. Everything I own now I chose again, not because I had to, but because I could. Megan stopped by once just to see the new space. She stood in the doorway for a long time before saying, "You look lighter." I told her the truth. I stopped mistaking loyalty for self-destruction. We didn't talk much about her anymore. There was nothing left to dissect. Some endings don't require autopsies. They rot on their own. And hers? Her story? It was already fading. Replaced by the quiet. The good kind. The kind that hums when you wake up and realize the day is yours again. And if there's one thing I'd tell anyone reading this, anyone standing in the middle of a betrayal, wondering how they got here, whether they're crazy, whether they should have fought harder, loved better, it's this. You didn't fail. You just stopped participating in a game rigged against you. She said we were healing, then I saw the bank alert. She paid for dinner with him. My chest sank. Her lies tasted sweet, but now truth burns. I cut off the card, cut off her excuses. This isn't heartbreak. This is the start of revenge. But revenge, I learned, isn't about payback. It's about reclaiming the life they tried to rewrite. And I'm living every sentence now. Free. Clean. Untouched by her fire. And most of all, undefeated.